Okay, good. So we're on the first order condition for maximizing profits. We're just going to kind of derive this little thing. It's no big deal. We're just trying to kind of do everything step by step, no stone unturned kind of a thing. And then it'll take a while to define the graphs below this, I think are a little bit hard to interpret. So that comes next. But anyways, we know that profit as a function of Q equals revenue as a function of Q minus our cost as a function of Q. I think we find through the book, just depending on what concept we illustrate, there's a good half dozen ways to write this stuff. It doesn't really matter. But if there's a constant price per each item, in the quantity of items we produce, the revenue is obviously price times quantity. Yeah, minus the cost as a function of Q. So we see that right there. Yeah, and then I'm going to kind of start to write on top of this. So we write our own. But what is the cost? We're saying that the cost is the fixed cost minus the variable cost. So we just put that in there. Revenue minus the total cost is the fixed cost minus the variable cost. And the variable cost is also a function of Q. Yep. So no big deal. The price as a function of quantity is price times quantity. Distribute the negative minus the fixed cost, and then plus, what happened here? This should have been a plus. Yeah, obviously the cost is the fixed cost plus the variable cost. Therefore, this is a negative. Yeah, minus variable cost. Maybe it helps to rearrange that because it's a function of Q. So this is the price times quantity. Yeah, price times quantity minus the variable cost, which is a function of Q. Yeah, minus the fixed cost, which is not a function of Q. Yeah. And then they kind of end it with this thing that I put in parentheses or brackets here. Yeah. So the profit is going to be the variable profit. How does the profit vary? Well, we see there. But the revenue minus the variable cost is going to be the variable profit. That thing in brackets we're calling the variable profit. So the profit as a function of quantity is going to equal variable profit as a function of Q. That is this entire thing here minus the fixed cost. Okay, so that's kind of the idea they're trying to get through with that whole thing there. Where we define the variable profit as revenue minus the variable cost. Since fixed cost is not a function of quantity, choosing a quantity that maximizes profit is equivalent to choosing a quantity that maximizes variable profit. Of course, the fixed cost affects the actual profit of the firm, but it does not affect the optimal choice of Q. How far into this do we have to go here? 3.14b. Okay, so we're doing all this 3.14 down here. So it's very, very hard to kind of take all this stuff in here. Yeah. What are these graphs basically? Using the graph to find the variable profit. Okay. So they have A, they have B, they have C, they have D. We just have to reference that over and over and over. Okay, so we will now present two alternative ways of visualizing the firm's optimization problem. First, we will use the marginal revenue and marginal cost curve. If the firm sells Q star units at the price P per unit, then the revenue is, of course, PQ, is the area of the shaded rectangle at figure 3.14a. So that's the hard part about deriving all of this, is kind of holding it in your head right there. But we have A, the shaded is the total profit. That's marginal revenue. And the shaded at each quantity is the profit at that revenue there. Okay, so I know what they're going to do on the second one there with the marginal cost. Yeah. You can think about it as follows. When the firm sells unit Q1, it receives an additional revenue, marginal revenue, the price P, which is the distance from the horizontal blah, blah, blah. They're just describing that graph right there. Q2, blah, blah, blah. So from Q equals 0 to Q equals Q star, it's going to be the entire shaded thing there. The sum of all three revenue generated is the area of the rectangle. Similarly, if the firm produces Q units at the marginal cost MC for each Q, then the variable cost is the area of the shaded triangle in 3.14b. So that's what I thought was coming up next. That's the variable cost of Q star. Yes, it's going to be the area under the marginal cost. Okay, good. So we could just graph revenue and cost, not marginal. I don't mean to get all freaky, but these are derivatives. So if you integrate a derivative, you get back to the function that you had. The integral of marginal cost is cost. The integral of marginal revenue is just revenue. And what does an integral do? It gives you the area under the graph. So the area under the graph is the y value of the previous graph. I'm just talking about stuff they're not talking about. But we always try and see the relationship between areas and the y and the slope of the y and blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyways, we're talking about the derivative, the marginal. So the actual cost is going to be the area under the graph of the marginal cost. I understand that. When the firm produces unit Q1, blah, 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 they're going to say all that same stuff until they get down there to Q star. The sum of all additional costs incurred is the variable cost. Note that this does not take into account the fixed cost, since the marginal cost curve does not contain information about the FC. The FC drops out when you take the derivative. Consequently, when the firm produces Q star, the difference between the revenue rectangle A, we can see it now there. Yeah, in the variable cost triangle in B, we can see that is the variable profit, the blue triangle in C. What the heck? Okay, so they take A and B and they subtract them and they get that. So it's not profit, it's the total revenue is A, the total cost is C, so the profit would of course be the revenue minus cost, which is going to be that in C. So we see that as obvious there. It's starting to become very obvious what these graphs mean, yeah. Quantity Q star maximizes variable profit. If the firm were to produce less than Q star, say Q2, so we know what the heck they're saying there. What are they saying in 3.14D? Okay, well, that doesn't matter. They're just saying we only produced a Q2, but it's still showing in between blue and red is the actual profit of the firm. We can, I know that it's meaningless when I illustrate these silly things because it's just so obvious. But if we produce right here, that right there is going to be the profit. If we produce right here, this whole thing here is going to be the profit. It's just always going to be the blue minus the red, whatever the area is in between two graphs, and blah, blah, blah. If you have a fancy graph, the integral would be an integral. What am I talking about? Okay, so we understand all that. They do D, we haven't said E yet. Okay, so the red in E, yeah, we see that red is negative money. All of this is just money that we're going to be losing right there. So we shouldn't, yeah, it shows our money loss, and we really, really shouldn't be producing in that area beyond Q star. So let's see what they describe. Finally, they did variable cost profit, the area minus the area of the red triangle. Yes. So I see that now. Let's continue in the next video.